Welcome to the Tiny House Ideas podcast.
You can't. There's this great story that Clayton Christensen told before he passed away. The Harvard professor and just a friend of mine too. He tells a story of a Chinese student who was studying at Harvard, and I don't know the story, every detail of it, but but I'll give the gist of it. And he said, "What have you learned since you've been here? What's your observation of being at Harvard and being here?" And he said, "I didn't understand before I came here the role of the churches in democracy. I didn't know that before." And what he went on to explain was that people had to, for democracy to work, you have to voluntarily obey the law. You have to choose to stop at the US at the stop sign. There is no way to enforce it. And the way Clayton, concludes this, he's like, because you cannot, if people don't voluntarily choose to be a course, and it's not limited, of course, to the church or even to religious institutions, but unless the individual, en masse chooses themselves to follow the laws and follows the rules that have been agreed collectively, you can't get enough police. You can't hire enough police to solve that problem. And that's at the big, broad level. And of course, at time of conversation, we've just seen the most horrific things happening in the Capitol in the US. And the same thing, you can't hire enough police if this contract breaks down. But that's true in much smaller ways in our own, in our own relationships, in our own families. You can't be enough of a thug as a father to force execution of what you want. Yeah. Maybe you could, but that's the worst possible scenario, right? What you want is the effortless way, where you're gently investing over a long period of time. So people are choosing to collaborate, choosing to work together. And it's not every day. We have lots of, plenty of rough moments, rough days, but there's also enough effortless experiences that prove this point that culture can be created in this way. Definitely, that is the thing. It's sort of about the sort of longevity of things and how you can sort of, in a way, design your life to sort of create that mental and physical space that you are sort of doing things for the right reasons, which is so valuable to hear. Yeah, and I mean, specifically, I'm thinking about in COVID times, after having gone through this experience with Eve over 2 years, one of the things we learned was the hard way to do life is to complain. And no situation is bad enough that complaining won't make it harder. And borrowing from BJ Fogg again here, Tiny Habits, one of the things he suggests is that you create a habit recipe where you say, well, after I do X, I will do Y. So that you connect to something you're already doing. And I thought, well, how about after I complain, I will say something I'm thankful for. And as soon as I started that habit, I couldn't believe how much I complained. That is the first thing I noticed. I think myself as a positive person. I think I'm optimistic, hopeful, and I just could not believe it. I just complained all the time. I was just whining about everything. It was just amazing to me. And it makes you realize to just walk into a room. Oh, why have you left that stuff out? What are you doing? It's just like it's so often that I was doing that. So I changed the habit. Okay, every time I complain, fine, you can complain, but you got to say something thankful afterwards. Yeah. And I just couldn't believe how quickly that changed my language with people. How you could tell, like my family was, that's just relaxed, and it was like you start the game of finding people doing the right thing, praising the right thing, the good thing, and this, what we're describing is two patterns of execution that grow from this. Barbara Fredrickson called it the broaden and build theory. And what she means is that she describes two cycles, a downward spiral and an upward spiral. And it begins with what your emotional state is. If you start to experience negative emotions, what happens is a very natural spiral. You go from negative emotion to either fight, flight, freeze. We're all familiar with this, fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
And what that's really doing is it's a narrowing of your options. You start to feel that there's very few choices. And because you feel few choices, you feel stuck. Your relationships tend to, that they start to feel torn and not so great. And so and therefore you're less well equipped for whatever the next challenge is. The next, whatever it is, right? The next email that comes, the next class at university, whatever the thing is, you're just less in a position to deal with it. And so that leads you to more negative feeling and so on and so on. But her broaden and build theory simply says, it's not the key point. She's not saying in her theory that if you do well, you'll feel well. She's saying if you feel well, you'll do well.
You'll do well, yeah.
Once you have positive emotions, you start to feel an expansion of optionality. You feel you've got these good emotions going on. You start to go, well, there's 5-10 different things we could do. There's so many different things we could do here. And you start, even if you have an interaction with somebody and you start having a positive interaction with them, you start to go, well, there's all sorts of ways we could work together and solve this problem. And yeah, you're frustrated with this, but what if we could do this and so on? And so there's this expansion of optionality, and that increases your relationship strength. And therefore, you actually grow both in capability and in network. And so you're in a better position to deal with whatever the next challenge is. So that's the upward spiral. Yeah. So I literally have found that gratitude is sort of the nexus difference between this downward, hard, exhausting cycle and this upward cycle. You just simply find anything to be grateful for. My son, Jack, there was a time that we would have the same sort of rule. We'd say, okay, yeah, you can complain, go, but you got to say something thankful afterwards. So go, complain, now what you're thankful for. And we'll say, oh, you're going to say 3 things you're thankful for. And he was like, this has literally happened multiple times. Oh, yeah, Dad, I'm so thankful that Dad is playing this game again. Right? Totally full of that emotion. And you know what? It doesn't matter. Gratitude is so powerful. It's enough that it still changes the mood. Everyone immediately starts laughing. Gratitude is this powerful. And so you can get yourself back into an effortless state almost instantly through gratitude. One thing you're thankful for, and you suddenly are like jerked out, oh, well, actually, I got a lot to be grateful for. And it grows and grows.
That is really, really powerful. I think that example there sort of saying how sort of showing that gratitude there did put a smile on everyone's face, and it served the purpose that it was meant to, even sort of if not literally, I guess, which is really interesting. And I think also what you mentioned as well about sort of going into situations sort of maybe with a negative mindset, sort of finding things to sort of complain about or to whine about, and sort of thinking of ways to sort of alleviate that, sort of reminded me as well of in terms of Stoicism and their sort of practices, how they said, if there's things that sort of are out of your control, then what are you going to gain from sort of having to worry about them, from sort of having to sort of bring that on yourself? You need to sort of, I guess, sort of be almost essentialism to sort of to just focus on what really matters. Thanks for watching this little teaser for the Tiny House Ideas podcast. If you'd like to listen to the full episode, it's available on all major streaming platforms. So that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all of the others. Alternatively, if you'd rather watch it sort of in a video format like this video has been, then that's available on Patreon. Just search for Tiny House Ideas. So thanks again for watching. Please do check out the full episode, and thanks again.